Assalamu alaikum. I'm Carl Arrindell and you're watching In Focus. Now I'm pleased to be joined today in Gaza by the Deputy Minister of Detainees, Mohammed Najib Al-Qatari. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Islam Channel. Now I gather your name, Mohammed Najib Al-Qatari, has some special significance, and I think that relates to the fact that you yourself have spent time detained in Israeli jails. Is that correct?
الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله ولا بعد. بداية أشكره على هذا اللقاء واهتمامه بقضية.
My name is significant because I was born on the 12th of July 1953. At that time, there was an Egyptian revolution against King Farouk, and Mohammed Najib became president, so my family named me after him. This is what we use for names as Palestinians. For example, my brother was born in 1957 and his name was Gamal.
ينتقوا بعض الأسماء المناسبة للحدث.
Minister, I should like to understand the role of the ministry. I have to say that I don't think I've ever come across a ministry with a title such as that, Ministry of Detainees. What necessitates such a ministry?
حقيقة جاء هذا الاسم بعد قدوم السلطة.
The Palestinian Liberation Organization was originally responsible for all the prisoners, the family of the martyrs, etc. After the Palestinian Authority came to Gaza and the West Bank, they created this ministry. Why did they create this ministry? If you want to speak about statistics and about how many Muslims, Arabs and Palestinians are in Israeli jails, you will find there are 7,000 long-term prisoners, and there needs to be a minister to take care of them, so it's a necessary ministry.
So I gather, Minister, that you have yourself spent time inside Israeli jails. I suppose that was one of your unique qualifications for the post.
I'm originally from a Palestinian village called Simsim on the land of 1948. As you know, they occupied Palestine and I moved to the Jabalia camp in the Palestinian territories. After that, Israel occupied Gaza with tanks, and I went to work with the Liberation Army, which was followed by the Palestinian Liberation Army in 1970. I was jailed in 1971 and released in 1972. I was arrested again during the October War in 1973, and in 1974 I was arrested again and accused of many things. I was detained from 1974 until 1985. They released me during the Ahmed Jibril prisoner exchange. I returned briefly to prison in 1986 and then they released me. In 1992, they arrested me and transferred me to another prison for 1 year. Then, in 1994, when the Palestinian Authority came to Gaza, they arrested me twice. I've spent 17 years in jail and don't remember any year without spending time in prison.
So I suppose that uniquely qualifies you for your role as Deputy Minister of Detainees. I have to ask you, I know you mentioned some sizable numbers earlier on that overall the statistics show about Palestinian prisoners, but how many Palestinians are currently in Israeli jails?
حقيقة الآن معتقلين 6,500 شخص.
There are exactly 6,500 prisoners, but sometimes you hear the wrong figures because people mistakenly refer to the figure of 11,000, but we have the statistics. From Gaza, we have just 650 detainees. That's because they released some of them. However, at the same time, the number in the West Bank has increased. Sometimes we can't give the numbers for the West Bank because people were jailed and we didn't know about it. But at the moment, we can say the number is 6,500.
Okay, well, what sort of periods are usually the detainees kept imprisoned for? I mean, I know it will vary, but is there a general consistency, at least in some of the terms handed out to people detained?
There are differences, but I want to speak about those who receive life sentences. Those who are basically told, you'll be in jail forever. There is no distinction, Some are told you'll remain in jail, but don't know exactly how long their term is. It could be 25 years, or could be 99. But according to the Red Cross, forever means 99 years. Those in prison forever are suffering so much, but they only represent a small percentage of prisoners. This is because of the Ahmed Jibril prisoner exchange. There were at least 1,150 released. The highest percentage of prisoners are those serving between 1 and 5 years.
هم أصحاب المدد التي أقل من 5 سنوات.
Now, I know that there are exceptional cases. You just mentioned some rather extreme figures. I know about the case, I've heard about the case of Mr. Farah Barghouti, who has apparently served a very extended term, and maybe there are others. Is that, can you possibly enlighten us?
حقيقة يمكن
Nail and Fakhri Barghouti are among the longest serving prisoners. I remember when they went to jail in 1977, Nail was just a young boy, and he's been in prison ever since. And they refused to release Fakhri Barghouti during the Ahmed Jibril exchange. They were discussing it with Ahmed Jibril, and there was a Japanese man called Kosomoto. He was fighting for the Palestinians in Israeli jails. At the time, Israel said don't take Barghouti and take 250 other prisoners instead. He insisted on the release of these men, and it's now a catastrophe to see them still in prison. And their sons are also now in jail with them.
وكان نصيبه السجن هذه الفترات الطويلة.
Now, I understand that many of the detainees are young children, and by which I mean young people who are under the age of 18. That they're often detained for protracted periods from anything from 1 to 6 years for acts such as throwing stones at military vehicles. Are these children kept in special appropriate units away from the other adults, or are they all in one prison?
الغالب بيحاولوا مرار يضعوهم بين سجناء مدنيين للتأثير على نفسياتهم وعلى وضعهم حتى.
Sometimes they put them in the same prisons, but sometimes they put them with civilian criminals to affect them psychologically, because they don't want those youngsters to be affected by the thinking of the revolutionaries in jail who are anti-Israeli. So Israel seeks to destroy them psychologically, and sometimes they pressure them to become collaborators.
فبيحاولوا يضعوهم في غرف سواء مختلطة مع مدنيين أو في غرف منفصلة لوحدهم.
It has been reported that both adult and child detainees are regularly subjected to torture or torment during their periods of imprisonment. How widespread is such brutalization of detainees?
العدو الصهيوني جلهم هزيمة
The Israeli aim is to psychologically destroy the Palestinians and torture them, and they want the person to admit what they did or give information by any means. And even the Israeli High Court has confirmed the torture law. They are making the Shalit law so as not to release prisoners. They made it legal for a fighter, if he has finished his jail term, to stay in prison. So what Israel did is against the Geneva Convention and against international law.
يعتبروا أنه من حقهم أن يحاكموا المتهم على اعتراف أي واحد مهما كانت التهمة.
Now, there are often cases where women who are in the throes of pregnancy have been detained, and children are then subsequently born in the jails. Can you tell me, please, what happens in those cases? I'm talking also about the process of childbirth, but also about what happens with the children after childbirth.
يعني معروف مدى التعتيم الإعلامي الصهيوني على قضايا القتل اللي قاموا فيها والضرب أو الإهانات. يعني
The Israelis don't reveal any details about this in the media. In the last 4 years, they have released 2 mothers who gave birth in jail. They were released into Gaza. The first one is in Gaza and her son is Taha. The second one is Fatima and her son is Yusuf. Both of them are here in Gaza, and you can go to see them and interview them so they can tell you what happened to them when they gave birth. The Israelis tied their hands and legs. No human would accept that. They insisted on doing that. The Israelis have no ethics or manners. It's not by chance that Fatima called her son Joseph, which means how to be patient. The other one was called Bara, which means innocent.
يبدو كان هيك قدرا انه الاسم او اسم الطفلين كان لهم نصيب من ناحية الربط المعنوي والنفسي في الواقع الفلسطيني.
I notice there's a map just behind you, Minister, which shows the location of Israeli prisons. I understand that one of the regular techniques used to intimidate and torment detainees is to deliberately imprison the detainee in prisons remote from their families, so that it's almost impossible for families to regularly visit, and that means they can't take food, they cannot have children, cannot see their fathers, and so on. I have also listened to a number of heartrending stories from some of the wives and mothers of detainees about the cruel nature of the restrictions imposed on family contact, including, for example, the failure to allow detainees to attend funerals of family. Now, it seems to me that a lot of these things are brutally at odds with the Geneva Convention. I know you just mentioned it. Has there been any process where, even in the Israeli high courts, you have been able to challenge what goes on there?
يعني حقيقة المجرب للتعامل مع القانون في إسرائيل أنه هناك قانون للمواطن اليهودي وليس لغير اليهودي لأنه دولة
Israel has its own laws. It has a law for Jews and doesn't recognize anyone else, only Jews. I'm from Simsim. It's just 4 kilometers from the Gaza area, but I can't go there. They have created their own law. Let me tell you, they diverted us to Marja Zahor in Lebanon. We took our case to the Israeli courts and lost our case, even though an Israeli dove was in charge at the time. But this doesn't mean we should stop. We want to continue to go to court. This is also the mission of the humanitarian organizations, the people who love us.
ما يطرح حتى في المستويات العليا عند العدو الصهيوني.
I have to say on that note, Mohammed Najib Al-Qatari, the Deputy Minister of Detainees, it's been a real pleasure, and thank you so much for joining us on Islam Channel.